The first week of August 2025 marked a seismic shift in the global economy. The Trump administration imposed sweeping tariffs on over 60 countries, upending decades of predictable rules-based trade. Duties ranged from 35% on Canadian goods to 100% on imported semiconductors, signaling the end of the old order. For Canada, so deeply tied to the US, this was an economic earthquake. The CUSMA framework, once a shield, now seemed porous as tariffs targeted goods outside the agreement. Allies and rivals alike were hit, and the global supply chain was thrown into chaos. Economists warned of rising prices and falling productivity, expecting a tit-for-tat tariff war. Into this turmoil stepped Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney, facing immense pressure to retaliate. The world expected Canada to follow the familiar script-match tariffs with tariffs, escalate, and negotiate. But what happened next would defy expectations and signal a new approach. Carney was about to rewrite the playbook, choosing a path that would reshape Canada's future. The world watched, uncertain and anxious, as a new economic era began. For over a century, Canada's prosperity has been tied to its powerful southern neighbor. The US-Canada border is not just the world's longest undefended line, it's the artery of one of the largest trading relationships on Earth. Canadian businesses have relied on US markets, while American firms depend on Canadian resources and stability. This deep integration has brought prosperity, but also vulnerability. Any shift in Washington sends shockwaves north. Traditionally, Canada has responded to US trade disputes with measured, proportional retaliation, targeting politically sensitive American goods to force negotiation. Prime Minister Mark Carney, with his background in global finance, understood the risks of a direct confrontation. When the Trump administration imposed a 35% tariff, Carney faced a choice: follow the old playbook or chart a new course. Retaliation risked a downward spiral, with Canada likely to suffer more. The new tariffs weren't a negotiating tactic, they were a permanent shift. This was no longer a spat over lumber or dairy, it was a fundamental challenge to the Canada-US economic relationship. Carney and his advisors saw that a tit-for-tat response would trap Canada in a no-win scenario. A new strategy was needed, one that looked beyond the immediate crisis. The moment called for bold, long-term thinking. On August 5, 2025, Prime Minister Carney stunned the world with a televised address. Instead of retaliating, he announced Canada would not engage in a tariff war. Instead, Carney unveiled a bold pivot, a national project to reduce economic dependence on the US. The plan focused on aggressive diversification, investing in high-tech, green energy, and advanced manufacturing. Canada would seek new trade partnerships with the EU, Pacific Rim, and emerging markets in South America and Africa. Carney also moved to strengthen ties with Mexico, aiming to create a resilient North American market outside Washington's control. By refusing to retaliate, Carney sidestepped Trump's confrontation, choosing to build a new economic table rather than play by old rules. The move was risky, requiring national unity and sustained investment. It was a gamble that Canadian innovation and new markets could offset the pain of US tariffs. Carney wasn't just reacting, he was using crisis as a catalyst for transformation. Canada was betting on self-reliance and global engagement. In Brussels, Carney's announcement sent shockwaves through the European Union. EU officials, facing their own US tariffs, had expected Canada to lead a united front of retaliation. Canada's refusal to fight back broke the coalition's momentum and was initially seen as weakness. But as Carney's diversification plan became clear, European leaders recognized a different strategy at play. Canada was positioning itself as a stable, open partner for global trade, just as the US was closing its doors. The move forced the EU to reconsider its own approach, escalate the trade war, or pivot toward new alliances. Canada's strategy offered a constructive alternative, building new partnerships instead of deepening conflict. The Canadian bypass became a hot topic in Brussels, challenging assumptions about how to respond to US protectionism. Carney's move exposed the limits of retaliation and suggested a new path for middle powers. Europe was left to ponder whether diversification was wiser than confrontation. The business world's reaction to Carney's pivot was swift and divided. US companies reliant on cross-border supply chains faced new uncertainty as Canadian partners looked elsewhere. The fear was not just tariffs, but the unraveling of the North American manufacturing ecosystem. In Canada, sectors hit by US tariffs felt abandoned, While tech and green energy firms saw opportunity, Carney's plan signaled a government-backed push for innovation and global competitiveness. Markets initially reacted with volatility. The Canadian dollar dipped as investors processed the shock. But as the long-term strategy became clear, foreign investment eyed Canada as a stable North American base. International corporations saw Canada as an antidote to U.S. unpredictability. Trade delegations from Europe, Asia, and South America began flocking to Ottawa. For global firms, the choice was stark risk U.S. instability, or partner with a Canada committed to open trade. Carney's gambit put a giant "open for business" sign on Canada's door. The world was taking notice. Canada was no longer just America's neighbor, it was a new hub for global commerce. Carney's strategy is a high-stakes bet on Canada's future. If successful, it could free Canada from U.S. dependence and build a resilient, innovative economy. Stronger ties with the EU and Asia could secure prosperity for generations. Canada could become a respected middle power known for stability and forward-thinking policies. The plan could attract a wave of foreign investment, fueling growth in high-tech and green industries. But the risks are immediate. Traditional sectors deeply tied to the U.S. face job losses and hardship. The pain from U.S. tariffs is real and could undermine political support for the pivot. The strategy depends on other countries absorbing Canadian goods and services, something that takes time and negotiation. There's no guarantee new markets will offset U.S. losses quickly enough. Carney is betting on Canadian resilience and a shifting global order. The outcome will define Canada for decades. It's a wager on innovation, adaptability, and the courage to chart a new course. Carney's response is more than a Canadian story. It's a new playbook for middle powers in a turbulent world. For decades, countries like Canada and Australia relied on U.S. leadership for stability. The events of August 2025 shattered that certainty, exposing the risks of dependence on any single power. Carney's move is the first major attempt by a G7 nation to forge a proactive, resilient strategy. The lesson: in an age of economic coercion, the best response may be to disengage and build new networks. Influence now comes from agility, reliability, and acting as a stable hub in a fractured world. By refusing to retaliate, Canada claimed the moral and economic high ground. If the pivot succeeds, it could inspire a new wave of alliances and a more resilient global order. Carney didn't just answer a tariff, he challenged the assumptions of international relations. In a world where the old rules no longer apply, Canada is showing how to write new ones.